Hola, ¿cómo estás? Bienvenido de nuevo a mi canal. Mi nombre es Carla Puga y hoy tengo en entrevista a James Whittaker. Él es emprendedor, autor de libros, conferencista y tiene un podcast. Y en la entrevista nos va a platicar sobre sus libros y qué podemos aprender de ellos en estas épocas tan turbulentas. Así que vamos a verla. Well, hello everyone. Thank you once again to my channel. Today I have the great pleasure to be with James Whittaker. James is an international book author. He's also a speaker. He's a podcaster and a movie producer. And he's going to talk to us about his most recent book. And welcome, James. Thank you for giving me a little bit of your time to be with me.
Great to see you, Carla. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Well, James, first of all, I know you used to be in finance, right? You have like a corporate career. And then, we were together in an MBA program. And from there, you decided to move on to the entrepreneurial world. Can you tell us how was that switch from corporate to entrepreneurship?
Very, very different and very, very crazy, to give you the honest
Okay.
truth. So I spent more than 10 years in the corporate world back in Australia in financial planning, which was great. I had a really good time, but I always had the feeling that there was maybe a little bit more out there for me. And it was only after moving to Boston, and obviously Boston's where you and I met, it was only after being in Boston and meeting a lot of entrepreneurs for the first time and being surrounded and immersed in that entrepreneurial culture. That's where I got the sense that maybe I need to be an entrepreneur. Maybe that's what I have been missing my entire life. So I went into the MBA program expecting to get a different corporate job and stay in America, but I ended up going down this roller coaster entrepreneurial path that was, a tough roller coaster at the time. But looking back at the last 8 years, it's been such an amazing ride, and I wouldn't change it for anything.
Okay, cool. And what was your first entrepreneurial, role? What did you do there?
So many. When I was in Boston, I was trying to create this app development company, to make like mobile apps for your phone. And I was told that the cost of apps there was so expensive.
Yeah.
And it's tough if you don't know the rules of the game. Like there are people out there who are friends with the people who work at Apple and have got these big companies. They have all these different things that they can do. So it meant that any time that I was going to create an app, it would be much more expensive to develop and much harder to have visibility on the platform because I didn't really know anyone who was doing that. So after many months of going down that route, I ended up deciding that that was not a path that I wanted to follow, which was great because it saved me a lot of money and I'm sure a lot of stress along the way. But then ended up with a social media brand that had a couple of 100,000 followers on social media, then created one of the world's largest CrossFit gyms back in Australia, where I was traveling back and forth between Los Angeles, where I live now, and Australia. Then a clothing company, then the film, multiple books, podcast host, and then now a podcasting company where I help people who have a podcast to make money. So I've been involved in,
Wow.
and they're just the ones that have worked out well. I mean, there are dozens more product launches and companies that haven't gone so well.
Oh, wow. So, you have really been around the place with all these entrepreneurial things, right?
Yeah, it's been another example is I had two friends of mine in Australia who were two of the top sports dietitians in Australia, like people who help athletes with their diet.
Okay.
We were going to create a nutritional supplement company. And similar to the app thing, we reached a point where it was, we realized that the minimum order quantity that we needed to start this company was, it was going to be like $30,000 or $40,000. And just the three of us were busy separately, and I just had a feeling that it wasn't going to be a great idea for us to do that together. So we ended up not doing that after about 9 months or almost a year of going down that route. So many different, I'm never short of ideas. And a lot of people out there might think they've got a lot of great ideas, but it's really how you execute on those ideas. And ideally, if it's something that aligns with your purpose and your mission and what you love to do, that's what makes the biggest difference. And they're the things that I'm involved in today that ironically are the most successful.
Wow. Well, that's interesting. And how did you decide to move or to start with the books things? Because I know you have one book called Think and Grow Rich, The Legacy, and it is based on Napoleon Hill. So can you tell us, first of all, how did you come up with the idea of developing this book? And then who is Napoleon Hill? Because at least here in Mexico, he's not that known. So it would be interesting to see for my audience who that guy is.
Yes, and Think and Grow Rich, The Legacy is actually available in Spanish on Amazon at the moment too. So it's I think you can get it as an ebook and an audio book, and it's actually very big in Spain. This movie and this book
Okay.
that I've been involved in. So Napoleon Hill was a young reporter from Virginia in the United States, and he met a guy called Andrew Carnegie. This was in 1908, so more than 110 years ago, a long time ago, and Andrew Carnegie, the guy that Napoleon Hill was meeting, had actually come over to the US from Scotland with no money. He had nothing to his name and built one of the greatest fortunes in history, not just at the time. He's like the second wealthiest person in the history of civilization. But Carnegie was near the end of his career when Hill met him. So Carnegie was very big on how can I give back to people. So he basically challenged Napoleon Hill. He said, if I introduce you to hundreds of the most successful people who ever lived, would you find commonalities? Like, what are their common attributes? If you could put that together into an achievement philosophy that anyone could apply when they're faced with the hundreds of daily decisions that we're faced with each day, that would take people from being ordinary people to extraordinary achievers. So Napoleon Hill did that. He went out and interviewed people like, obviously, Andrew Carnegie, but people like Thomas Edison and Henry Ford and more than 500 other people. And he ended up writing a book called Laws of Success and many, many other books. But his most famous book is called Think and Grow Rich. And that was released in 1937 and has sold more than 120 million copies around the world. It's been a bestseller ever since. And a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to meet some people who were making a movie about Think and Grow Rich for the first time. And they basically asked me to write a book, a modern companion to that original Think and Grow Rich. So I did, called Think and Grow Rich, The Legacy, and I was executive producer of the film. And that's how I basically got involved in writing books over here in America.
Wow, that's really cool, because basically one of the things that I like about this book is that usually when we hear like stories about great businessmen, great businesswomen, athletes, people who have achieved like fame and glory, we think, oh, they come from a privileged background or they had an upper hand, someone helped them. But based on your research and also on the Hills book, what can you tell us about that? Is it really true that they have like an advantage, or is there something else?
So often, which is such a crazy concept, often the bigger the adversity, the more enthusiastic they are and the more motivated they are to achieve that high level. So some of the people that I've included in my new book here, Andrew Carnegie's Mental Dynamite, is Jessica Cox, who was born without arms, and she ended up becoming the world's first armless pilot. She was born without arms and she became a pilot. Now, anyone who might be thinking, hey, I want to become a pilot, but it's just not possible for me. Well, if someone without arms can do it, do you think you could be a pilot if you applied yourself and came up with the right plan? Of course you could. There's another person called Jim Stovall who went blind at the age of 18. He was basically went totally and permanently blind. And I can't even imagine that. Like, imagine at 18, your whole world literally fades to black. And he ended up being the author of 30 best-selling books and the founder of the Narrative Television Network. Like, he created an actual TV network while blind. I mean, these stories are proof that it's possible for anyone. Anyone can achieve whatever success they want. They just need to have the right mindset. And Think and Grow Rich and Think and Grow Rich, The Legacy, and now my new book, it's an absolute blueprint on how to do that. I've interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people now myself, and I know it's exactly true what was contained in that original Think and Grow Rich. There's no valid excuse that I have heard for someone not to achieve what they want to achieve.
And is there like a certain commonality between all the people you have interviewed? I mean, what can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. So the very first one is desire. So Napoleon Hill wrote that the starting point of all achievement is desire. So the idea of that one is if you don't know what you want, it's impossible really for you to end up there. So all of the people who I speak with who feel like they're not living with purpose or they're not living with passion, inevitably it's because they're not clear on who they are and they're not clear on where they want to go. So on the condition that you're clear on who you are and where you want to go, well, then that paves the way for you to say, cool, I want to achieve this goal on the horizon. What plan do I need to put in place that's going to achieve it? So you work backwards from that. And then you figure out, what work do I need to do today that's going to help me get there? They focus on consistency, not intensity. They're not waking up trying to break a world record. They want to break a world record in the future, but they know if they try and break a world record every single day, they're just going to end up burnt out. So they focus on reinforcing that action, just simple consistency. Another big one, which has been by far the biggest factor in my own life, is the power of relationships. And that basically says that you don't have to have all the answers yourself. You can get other people excited in your mission. So it doesn't become your mission, it becomes a shared mission between you and the other people who you recruit to do what you want to do. And I mean, every opportunity that I have basically had in my life is as a result of relationships and doing the right thing by people. And the best way to do that is to give before you get, and to give without the expectation of anything in return. And if you can do that enough, and if you can turn yourself into a person who actually has a lot of value, which means you can give a lot of value away, you're going to get people excited in you and your mission, and they're just going to want to help.
Okay, well, that's interesting that you say that, because usually, at least for example, here in Mexico, sometimes people is like very jealous about their knowledge. And for example, they say, oh no, maybe you have a great idea, but if I help you and you achieve it, so maybe that is going to stop something in me. And you're like, why? I mean, if everyone works together and if I can help you in something I know it's going to be for the best, right?
Yeah, that's a really big thing in Australia too. So in Australia, it's called tall poppy syndrome. One of the things I love about the US is the entrepreneurial culture that's here. Sorry, let me just turn my alarm off there. One of the things I love about the US is this entrepreneurial culture where people they just want to see what you're up to and how they can help each other. So that's actually one of the big reasons that I'm here in America, because of that attitude as well as the opportunity. So at the end of the day, it's important to recognize that ideas are nothing. They're absolutely nothing. It's execution. It's how you execute on those ideas. So anyone can have a million good ideas. I mentioned dozens of the good ideas, or what I thought were good ideas earlier, but you need to figure out what you can do to execute on. And if you have an idea and you keep it to yourself and you eventually launch that product without getting any feedback from or advice or support from anyone else, then you are going to get destroyed by someone else who is recruiting people into that mission and that product. So it's basically making sure you're around the right people. If I have an idea and I talk to someone and they steal my idea, or they're really negative, then they're just not the type of people who I want in my life, and I would never trust them with my idea ever again. Now, the difference between negativity there that we're talking about, it's important that if you have an idea, like anytime I have an idea, I don't want someone to tell me it's good. I want someone to tell me, how can I make it better? It doesn't matter what situation it's at. Tell me how I can make it better. You need to give me essentially negative, constructive feedback so I can make it better. There's a big difference between that versus people who just want to bring you down and see you fail.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure that for all the people you have interviewed, they have that in common, right? That they appreciate the feedback, also saying, maybe this is not going to work because of this, and you can improve it by that. And it's really different than saying, oh, no, that's just not going to work. Just throw it away, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's funny that a lot of people who are academically very, very smart, often they are the ones who don't make very good entrepreneurs, because they can always think of 100 reasons as to why they shouldn't do something, 100 reasons as to why they shouldn't launch a business or bring that product to market. The best entrepreneurs are often people who aren't that good at evaluating risk. So they just take action. All they need is one reason as to why they should do it, and then they go all in on that idea.
Okay. And in terms of failure, is there also a commonality on how the people you have interviewed think about failure? Because sometimes it happens, right? That you start a venture, it doesn't work in a year or in 2 years, and you just say, oh, that's it, I'm going to close shop and I'm going to move on to something else. But is there everyone has had great failures. All the people that are great businessmen, businesswomen, athletes, everyone has to endure a lot of pain. So how do they manage this?
Absolutely. It's a really, really good question, actually. So how you respond to adversity when it inevitably strikes is what separates ordinary people from extraordinary achievers. I mean, learning from defeat is like 35% of this book, if not 40% or more of that book. So we know that adversity is going to strike all of us. And oftentimes we, like Jim Stovall, the story I mentioned earlier, at the age of 18, he could never have predicted that he was going to be blind. But once he was told that he was blind, he said, you know what? What's the gift in this? what is the benefit that I can find from the situation? So all of those people who are able to harness that adversity and use it for something good are so clear on where they want to go. Like we spoke about earlier, they're clear on who they are and where they want to go. They are so clear on their mission and their purpose and what they want to do that it doesn't matter if they get hit by a truck. It doesn't matter if they're born without arms, and it doesn't matter if they're blind.
Wow. That's, I think that's really inspiring because like everyone, we all have days when we say, oh no, I cannot do this. But you are your only limit. Like no one else is saying, no, you can't. You are the only person who is saying, no, I can't. And if you say that, you believe that. And then that happens, right? You cannot do it because you really believe you cannot do it.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And failure, as you said earlier, that failure is what hits everyone constantly. But you just need to figure out that once you have that failure, what can you learn from it? What's the gift in that? And how can you move forward stronger? A lot of people, we're still around today. And it means that we are stronger because if we're still here standing today, think about all the different adversities and struggles and challenges and toxic people and things that we've had in our life. We are stronger today because of all of that crap that we have gone through. But people are busy focusing on negativity in the present rather than trying to build themselves up.
Wow. And also, I mean, you have told us that we can find like a very big portion of your book that talks about failure, your newest book. What else can we learn in this book? Because I know it's really exciting to see what the book has to offer to us, but if you can sum up, what else can we learn from this book?
Well, there's so much to it. I'm really, really excited for this project. So it actually includes parts of that original interview between Napoleon Hill and Andrew Carnegie. So we go straight to the source in one of the most fascinating conversations of all time. The first thing it really talks about is how you can harness that self-discipline. Because if you don't have self-discipline, which basically says that if you don't have control over thoughts, then you can't expect to have any control over your actions. So the book starts off by figuring out how you can master your own mind. Then we move on to a different theme, basically learning from defeat. So how can you channel any adversity and any struggle that you face into something constructive for the future? Because most people who complain about what they don't have in the present, if they harnessed that exact same amount of energy that they use to complain about what they don't have and directed it to creating what they want, they would astound themselves with how quickly they get there. Literally that exact same amount of energy. It's just a transfer of energy. And the final one we talk about in the book is the golden rule applied. And that's basically what you do to another, you do to yourself. And that's where we really delve into the side of relationships there and how to form high-level relationships. And a big part of that is giving before you get and giving without the expectation of anything in return.
Okay. Cool. And I think this is like very current with the pandemic. I know everyone has lost something, right? I mean, either there are a lot of people who have lost jobs, family members, which is like the worst case scenario for me, at least. I think your books can really be like I don't know, maybe like a guide for someone who is a little lost, who doesn't know how to, move on. Maybe if you lose a job, then you have no idea what to do next because opportunities are not like as open as they used to be. So in your books, we can find that like path, that some kind of path.
Absolutely. There's a formula in this book that basically you'll never need to worry about working for anyone else again. And the whole idea, I'll just to give a little bit of a teaser of what that involves, is the clearer you are on the audience of people who you love to work with and the problems you like to solve, and the clearer you are on how urgent those problems are, because the more urgent a problem is, the more motivated someone else is to find a solution for that problem. So the clearer you are on the audience and the urgent problem they're facing, and the better you are at creating a solution to solve that problem. If you can do that, you'll never need to worry about working for anyone else again because you've got everything you need inside you.
Wow, that's really amazing, because I think, and also the pandemic has also proven that sometimes you just get lost and you have no idea what you want. And I think it's also like a good timing to do that kind of exercise, to like really reflect on where do I want to go? What do I want to do? Do I really want to work for this person, or do I want to take like a different path? Maybe challenge yourself a little, and it could be like a good learning opportunity, right?
Yeah, I'm really happy you brought that up because I focus on this stuff constantly. People might think, oh, you just have this thing once and you never look at it again. I am constantly looking at who do I love to work with? What do I need to do to get better and better and better? What are the problems that the audience is facing who I love to work with? So I'm constantly focused on that. And once you're aware on that, it doesn't necessarily what business you create. You've got that overarching mission, so you just need to then fill in the dots. You just got to create what needs to be done to deliver those solutions to people.
And I'm also guessing that it sounds easy, but it can be really hard, right? Because it confronts you with some like very hard questions, like, do I really know I am on the right path? Am I really doing what I want to do? So doing that kind of exercise can be challenging.
It certainly can, and it's probably the reason I have so much grey hair at the age of 37. But yes, it is. It is very challenging. But the more we challenge ourselves, the stronger that we are. The alternative to that is to go and get a job for a company you hate, working with people you hate. Why would you do that? Like, for a lot of people, the corporate world works for them, and that's totally fine. My older brother, he's a year and a half older than me. He's had the same job for 15 years. He's very successful at it. It's at a big accounting firm in Australia. I could never, ever, ever, ever do that. And I'm sure he could never, ever do what I do. We're just two different people. So, yeah, you've got to, if you're struggling to make a decision, just basically draw a line down a sheet of paper and write down the pros and cons of each one, and that will show you the way very quickly.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's going to be hard, but it's going to be for the better, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the freedom from the entrepreneurial journey, I feel like, is worth all the stress, of which there is a lot of stress. But hopefully, with everything that I'm doing, it's leading towards creating more freedom for me and my family, but also resources and things that we can use to go and help a lot more people.
That's cool. And, I know that also, in addition to the book, you have a podcast. What kind of content can we find in that podcast?
So the podcast is called Win the Day with James Whittaker. So I go and interview some of the most successful people in the world to help people take ownership of their financial, physical, and mental health. So some of the recent episodes, I had a guy called John Assaraf, who was the star of the 2006 film The Secret. So John talks about how you can basically achieve any goal. I mean, literally how you can achieve any goal that you can think of. Had a guy called Cos Mate, who was a drug dealer at the age of 13 in New York. Yeah, it's a crazy story. Who was arrested 10 times before he was 23. He ended up having the largest, he was making $5 million a year with a drug delivery service in New York, and he was thrown in jail. And while he was in jail, he had this massive epiphany and completely changed his life. And now he's a fitness entrepreneur. He's a best-selling author and done a TED Talk. It's an amazing story of redemption. So there's a lot of people who I interview, and I've got some great guests coming up soon too.
Wow, that's amazing. And where can we find you, James? I mean, in terms of if we want to hear the podcast, or if we want to see your movies, read your books, where can we find you?
Yeah, people can go to Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts and type in Win the Day with James Whittaker. It's also available on YouTube. Or you can connect with me on Instagram, James Whitt, or at my website, jameswitt.com.
Amazing. And, before we go, if you could give us like one piece of advice in terms of finding happiness and success in these troubling times, particularly in these times where everyone, like the world, is going crazy, what would that be?
I think it's important to double down on self-care. So making sure you look after yourself first. Go right back to the basics. Making sure you do your exercise. When you wake up, you don't look at your phone first thing in the morning. My wife and I recently started cold showers. So we've been doing a cold shower every morning, which seems crazy, but it actually really gets you in a great state of mind. So I think doing whatever you need to do to make sure you feel good yourself, because you can't give from an empty cup. You need to make sure you fill your cup first before you try and help other people.
Wow. Well, thank you, James. I mean, everyone has heard your advice. I agree with you. I think if you are not well, there's nothing you can do for everyone else, right?
Yeah, so true.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time. I hope everyone enjoys the interview. I'm guessing not many people may know you here in Mexico, but hopefully it's going to help in, reading all these stories and maybe putting things together, and also finding like a guide in these troubling times.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Carla. It's always great to see you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. ¿Qué te pareció? La verdad es que a mí me parece bastante interesante todo el contenido que hace James y sobre todo porque muchas veces pensamos que lo que distingue a las personas que pueden tener éxito pues son familias adineradas o ciertas conexiones y no necesariamente es así. La disciplina y sobre todo el autoconocimiento son clave para que podamos tener una vida extraordinaria. Así que espero que la entrevista haya sido de tu agrado. Abajo te voy a dejar la información de la página de James donde lo puedes encontrar. Y no se te olvide, dale like al video, suscríbete a mi canal y nos vemos en mi siguiente contenido.